27 February 2023. In this Skidmark, it's one of those what the fuck moments. And the title of this thing is What the Fuck Americans. Yes, correct, Americans, not America. And I know that this is going to make me quite unpopular with a lot of people, but this is something that has been bothering me for a long time, and I want to make it clear. I am not going to try to be historically correct and factually correct with everything. I'm just going to give you my view as a guy that sits here at the southern tip of Africa and how I see the things that is happening in America. Now, before I start with the thing, I want to cover these few points. Look at this image. This is an image from Libya. And then there is this image. This is the Americans bringing democracy to Libya. And I'm going to show you this image from Yemen. This is what American equipment and American participation is doing in Yemen. Now look at that image and think. You are sitting cozy in your home there in one of your cities or towns or whatever, thousands of miles away from this horror story. What would you have done if that was you stumbling out of those ruins with your child in your arms? What would you have done? The next question is, what do you think does these people think about when they hear the word America or Americans? Think about this. This is important. Your country is at a crossroads. And I don't know which direction you're going to take. But you need to be careful when you select the direction, because you may choose a road that is going to lead to destruction of your own country. Now, growing up here in South Africa, America was always for us, for me as a youngster, it was something that I was dreaming about, and I read a lot about it, and I watched a lot of movies from America, and John Wayne and guys like that, and we see the Americans was fighting the Indians and all of those things. And we had almost hero worshipping for America. And if we think about an American town, and this is what we see. We see images like this, and this is American towns. But that changed. Why did it change? And then today we have this. This is the American town. Look at that. That road is gone. Look, just look at it. And look at this. This is an American street. But look at it. Ruin. The worst part is your infrastructure. Look at what is happening to your infrastructure. And it's happening all around you. And you must be aware of it. And look at this. Whole bridge just collapsed. From age. From nothing else. No disaster, no natural disaster. That thing just collapsed. And then look at this factory. This was a factory. This was a place where people worked, where things were produced, where things were created, where American brains were designing stuff. And look at this plant. That was a factory that employed people, lots of people, and made things that were used by the people of America. Look at that. Just a ruin. And then this. This building at some stage was the home of a lot of activity. A lot of things were made there, things that were made for the people of America. And then look at this factory. It's a Packard factory. It's apparently the world's largest abandoned factory. So you've got at least that thing, that to be proud of. You own the largest abandoned factory in the world. Now, why did these things happen? I have my theories about that. But the big problem is the politicians. That politician species that started developing in the late 70s and has now grown into a tribe of their own. And they are fucking dangerous because they've got no morality. And it doesn't matter whether you vote blue or red, the end result is the same. Those guys have got the same agenda. Politicians has turned your lives into hell. First of all, they embarked on that crazy green shit. And in the old days, factories, every town, every small town and medium-sized town had industrial areas around it, engineering shops and tailors and all things like, all people creating and making things that the people of that town needed and bought from them and so forth. And then they became more popular, their brands, and they started exporting to the rest of their neighboring cities, and then they go international and things like that. And in that process, when they get national, all of a sudden that National Control Board has got no idea of who is actually producing the fruit for that cannery factory that were making these things that they are now selling nationally. But the problem for that brand is now that they need more production, so they are not so much interested anymore in the small farms and homesteads that were producing these things for them. They want now big commercial orchards and things like that, and then they go back to where these things originally come from, and they start buying up the small farms, and they demolish the homesteads and everything, and then they make big orchards, and machines do the most of the work, and the people lose their jobs, and in the end that product is no longer what it was originally. And this happens to many things. The big corporations got control over most of your lives in America, big brands, and then those big brands went a step further and they were looking for cheaper products, and they go and they find cheaper products in the other places in the world, and they stop buying from the local farmers, and they stop producing on the local lands and things like that, and then that town just disappears and evaporates into poverty. And the guys that were making clothes and so, they found themselves in this thing that the brands were getting cheaper from China and all of that. And the local industries closed down. And the local steel plants started closing down. And the local engineering shops started closing down. And everything closed down because the politicians were following instructions from their paymasters, and they were allowing products to stream in from the East at a fraction of the price of what it's manufactured in America. But what happened when America started losing all this manufacturing capacity of theirs? A hell of a lot of unemployment happens, and poverty started slipping into the cities and towns that were depending on those factories and so. And then there was that madness about the green dream and all of that, and reducing your carbon footprint and all that shit. And all of that were used by the politicians to make you accept the fact that they're closing your Detroit factories and they are now buying the complete products from China. In the meantime, your military industrial complex, those guys can only operate if there's a war. And for them to have a war, they need somebody to start the fucking war. And they've got their politicians in Washington that is on their payroll, that manipulates your foreign affairs in such a way that you are forever busy bombing people overseas. Thousands of your soldiers are in hundreds of bases across the globe. And everywhere you guys are sowing destruction. You have become a global terrorist organization, basically. And today we sit in a situation, and the Ukraine war has brought that to the foreground, that the bulk of the world's populations hates the Americans. And things is going wrong for America in the Ukraine now. They made a mistake and they underestimated Russia. And today, they are in a corner. And if you look at that, politicians of yours, your politicians, the people that you select, the people that you elect, the people that you empower to do all these things on your behalf, now that war in Ukraine is going sideways for them. They are desperately trying to find an off-ramp. But at the same time, they're poking the Chinese. Why? Why must you guys go all over the world and terrorize people, bomb places? You destroyed Libya, you destroyed Syria, you destroyed Yemen, you destroyed Iraq, you destroyed Afghanistan. Why are you doing it? Look how many of the Eastern European states, Czechoslovakia, Serbia. You guys bombed all those people into oblivion. You guys have killed millions of people around the world. And it is you that are empowering those politicians to do it on your behalf. So you must understand why I say you are doing it. You are responsible for these things. Now the world is sitting and faced with a dilemma. The Western world is in deep trouble. They have isolated themselves from the rest of the world, and the rest of the world has been sanctioned so heavily by you, the Americans, that they could not move, that they could not develop. And now they have found a way out of that. And that way is through things like BRICS and the association in Asia and things like that. The rest of the world has turned their back on America. And in this process in Ukraine, you guys destroyed your allies in Europe. You destroyed the European economy. You blew up Germany's main gas supply lines from Russia. You guys did it. How are the Germans going to survive? How are they going to get through this? They are going to collapse. The German economy, the German industries are going to collapse because they cannot afford that expensive gas that you want to sell to them. So you have treated your allies in Europe extremely badly. Those allies are going to turn their backs on you too. Why are you guys doing it? Why are you guys allowing those vermin in the shithouse in Washington to commit all these atrocities in your name? Why are you doing it? Listen to Jimmy Dore. Listen to Scott Ritter. Listen to Garland Nixon. They tell you what the hell is going on, but you don't seem to listen. Listen to what they're saying to you. America has gone around the world since the Second World War as the big street bully. People do as you say or you bomb them. And look at now, where are you now today? The rest of the world is crawling out from under that iron fist. And your problem is this: militarily, you are no longer a match for Russia and China. It's going to be a horror story, a shit show if that happens. The only thing that will maybe rein in a little bit of the violence is the fear for nuclear. Now the Russians and the Chinese don't need to fight a nuclear war with America. Their conventional weapons are more than enough and they will wipe you guys out. So think about that. Why did that happen? It is time that the Americans just go and sit quietly and think for a moment and try and imagine to become a good neighbor instead of being the bully and the dictator of the world. Think about that. If you guys don't do it, your country is heading for a disaster, because you will not survive if China and Russia gets involved in a direct conflict with America. And then add Iran to the package and add Northern Korea to the package. And you will see, America, there's no way that you cannot fight those guys. And you are very, very dependent on your fleet. But unfortunately, as it is with everything, technology has evolved. And today, the hypersonic missiles that the Russians and the Chinese has, you have got no defense against that. And that turns every one of your ships, every one of your warships, is turned into a floating coffin. You think you've got a lot of air superiority with all your fighter planes and things like that. Russia's got the most sophisticated anti-air defense system in the world. How many of your planes will survive the first sortie? Think about that. Why is it necessary for America to always be at war? You are a young nation, I think 240 years or something. And of that 240 years, it was only 16 years that you haven't been involved in a war. Why? Look at your infrastructure. Look at what is going on in your country. Your rails is falling apart. Everything is falling apart. Your government doesn't have money to help with that Ohio spill, but they've got billions to pump into the Ukraine. When are you going to stop for a moment and say, hey, what the hell is going on here? Whoa! Fix our roads, fix... You guys has got something, I think, 50 kilometers or 50 miles of high-speed rail track somewhere. The whole of China is covered in high-speed rail. But your country do not spend the money on you. And when they run short, they print more. That's why you are now suffering from inflation. And now you must watch, your nightmare is coming. The world is decoupling from the dollar because of what Biden has done. And with these latest moves of the confiscation of the Russian assets, you guys have showed the world that anybody that invests their money in dollars is stupid. This is going to cost you a lot. Imagine that if the whole of the world starts dumping their dollars. You do realize that 70% of your dollars is outside of your country. And if that 70% of dollars is going to get dumped, how are you going to cope with the inflation? Now, you think the 1930s depression was rough. What is coming after this is going to make that look like a walk in the park. And you are going to get extremely, and all because you elected those clowns into the White House. Think about it, and if you don't agree with me, put it here in the description, in the comments in this video. But you must think about this. You cannot win a war against Russia and China. Don't let the couch generals tell you different stories. Talk to real generals. You've seen it now. You can't even keep up with providing ammunition to Ukraine. They use more ammunition, 155mm shells, in 2 days than you can manufacture in a month. So the other 28 days they must sit and wait. For what? For a drive-by. Think about these things. It is time that you, Americans, takes control back of your lives. Those politicians are out of control, and they don't give a continental fuck about your well-being. Nothing. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you.